Hey everyone, today I'm going to talk about how I became a young and black non-executive director slash trustee within the UK. Now, of course, there are many other young black non-executive trustees within the UK. However, I just want to share my experience of this. And of course, the stats around this are going to be quite interesting to look at. And I want you to gain some perspective when it comes to this stuff. So I was doing some research and I checked Google Bard, and essentially I'm just going to read the first line. And it says here, there are very few young black male NEDs in the UK. According to the 2022 UK Spencer Stewart Board Index, only 0.8% of non-executive directors in the UK are black. And of these, only 0.2% are under the age of 40. This means that there are only a handful of young black male NEDs in the UK. Now, I think it was saying that 0.2% of the 0.8% are under 40. That is mad. That is mad to understand. And look, of course, this makes sense because you obviously want experience. You obviously want the right type of person to, again, support the direction of the business or organization when it comes to risk management, finances, strategic direction, accountability, legacy when it comes to the CEO or COO, whatever it may be. However, we're in a different age. We're clearly in a different age. And I'd love to see more young, black, male and female individuals within the space. And quite frankly, just young people in general, okay? So, I'm not quite under 30. I'm under 35, okay? Let's just say that. I'm not that young. But considering sort of like, the landscape of this space, it's interesting to see this stuff. Now, I don't want to give people false hope or false pretense because it's important to have a healthy middle and understanding and be clear, this is my experience. It doesn't mean you're going to have the same experience. But essentially, I'm going to break down some of the following. So the importance of building your portfolio career over time, why that's really important. The only things that you should care about, or I cared about at least, do not be afraid to hide your passions, seek out opportunities, and commit to a cause. So let's get into it. Let's get into the presentation. So essentially, I really want to edify this point of building your experience over time. I think is really important. And what I mean by this is, look, it's clear that irrespective of your sort of ethnic group or demographic or whatever it may be, experience is key. And for me personally, I'm more of a believer in experience as opposed to confidence, because confidence would insinuate something that you don't have. Do you understand? And so we need to be able to define things that we have done, no matter how small it is. We need to be able to have the skill to transfer those small things into the macro, into the bigger sort of landscape of stuff. So let's say, for example, if you've been very good at administration or organization or prioritization, of course, these are skills that you can utilize when it comes to the program or project management space. It's not exactly the same, of course, but there are ways in which you can use the same language and reflect it upon these different things. And you have to see that it's similar. It's definitely a fine line between lying and telling the truth, but understanding that you have produced that value. It's just been in a different capacity, and it comes down to your perception. You also need to be able to display that you're an expert, okay? And really an expert is somebody who's been able to do something again and again and again and get results. That's essentially what it is. That's who an expert is. Now, you could argue that an expert could be someone who understands the theory and et cetera, et cetera. That's also true. But the reality is, I want to be with the person who's actually done it. It's that simple. Everybody wants to be with that person. And so you have to be able to position yourself in that way. Now, being in the right field and positions are key. What I mean by this is, if you're trying to, work for the UN for whatever reason, and you want to help people in, I don't like saying third world countries, but countries outside of the West, okay, within the health space, then working within Public Health England or now UKHSA may be a sensible idea. Maybe your field was surrounding the whole logistics of things. Maybe you did some work when it came to COVID. That's very relevant. And so it doesn't have to be exactly the same thing, but it has to be relevant, so to speak. Okay. And you also need to be able to display the right characteristics. If you're looking to get into program management, again, displaying the right leadership skills, i.e. great listening, great sort of like communication when it comes to your verbal communication and empathetic cues, great sort of like organization and prioritization, knowing exactly how to implement certain methodologies or develop a cadence. All these things are key things that need to be done. And so you have to be able to understand that, okay, there is definitely things like nepotism that exists. There are definitely things like racism that exists. There is definitely some level of systemic sort of like stuff that exists based on unconscious or conscious bias. However, at a default, you need to be able to still present yourself as valuable. That has to be the thing, regardless. Because those different moments in which you present that value, okay, are going to be crucial, whether it is people who are supporters of your sort of like demographic and or value, or people who are not. They still see that you can get the job done. You have to have that mentality. Recognize those things exist, but you still have to have that mentality. That is the fine line, okay? That's how you make it work. So your goal is to create a portfolio career that makes sense, okay? It doesn't have to be super niche. It can be niche in some areas, but it can be general in other areas. And if you remember the previous video that I spoke about in terms of like contracting and stuff, I did talk about the fact that you have to have, or you should have, a generalist and specialist role that you can specifically do, okay? Now, for me personally, obviously, my portfolio career looked like the following, okay? I had a professional career as a senior manager within an NHS, namely within commissioning and I'm going to call it implementation, so to speak, or change management. Then obviously I moved into a space where I worked for government departments, okay, working on various different leadership positions, whether this was workforce, resourcing, program management, project management, or relationship management. These are all skills that I could utilize. Now, of course, you know, this is something I do outside of this space. I have / building a coach training organization as well, okay, where I'm providing accredited training to individuals who want to become a coach. So that's another thing that, again, that's surrounding my stuff. And I am a practice coach and everything else like that. And finally, I'm a creator, okay? I'm doing YouTube videos. I'm doing, you know, LinkedIn articles, all of this kind of stuff there. So this is all saying something about my brand. My brand is saying professional. It's saying leader. It's saying a certain level of emotional intelligence through the coaching stuff. It's saying all of this stuff. It's saying independent as well, because I'm doing my own thing whilst also supporting the government as well. So these are different things that you have to bear in mind when it comes to your stuff, okay? So really, really important to note here. So if we keep it moving, okay, we need to keep it moving. You also have to remember that you should only do things that you care about. And I say this because if you're looking for a non-executive director role, okay, or a trustee role, it's terrible if you're supporting something if you're not necessarily feeling that sense of cause behind it, that sense of meaning behind it. Don't just do it for clout. I see so many people, especially within my demographic, who do things for clout, but they can't be bothered and they provide subpar results. Now, this isn't specific to that demographic necessarily, but to people who do that in general. Not good. They just don't do it. Like, you need to focus on things that make sense. I wasn't looking for this position on the board. But when I saw it, I thought, you know what, I've been part of this organization for a while based on being a member. I've understood that they deliver on leadership capability training and just really advocating for leadership in general. I'm in. This makes sense. I'm scared, but let me try it, okay? So you have to focus on things and projects that you care about, because that will want to allow you to, again, support these causes. But at the same time, it also gives you the opportunity to learn. There's so much that you could learn from these different opportunities, okay, that you can sort of utilize for you moving forward. And of course, if you're doing something that you don't like and you're just going to these meetings every quarter and doing things on a monthly basis and going to the events, you just don't care about it, but you just want to say NED on your thing, you're definitely going to get burnt out. 100%. You're going to be like, what am I doing? What am I, why am I here? What? Don't chase the clout. Seriously, it just doesn't make sense. Now, look, most of you watching this, I may be wrong, okay? Most of you watching this may be within the UK. And, we're very much not accustomed to this US style of doing things where we brand what we've done. We've highlighted what we've been able to produce and all this kind of stuff there. And I'm saying to you, you need to be in a position where you can confidently talk about what you've done. You confidently highlight your accolades. You are not shy to revealing all the great stuff that you've done over the years. You present who you've worked with, how you've worked with them, all of that kind of stuff there. And the way you do that is talk about figures. You talk about money. You talk about time. You talk about years. You talk about associations with different big brands. This is what you do. This is how you rave and rant about your specific accolades. Really important to note here. And so there are so many different, individuals and businesses that have been born out of the pandemic. And you may have had something that just necessarily didn't work pre-pandemic, but you didn't rant and rave about it. So if you don't preach, you won't reach. Simple. That's just how it works. So you have to get into a space where you're happy to talk about the things that you've done. So this is where this quote comes into mind, okay, by Oprah Winfrey, where she has essentially said, never be afraid to show your talent. You think Oprah Winfrey would be Oprah Winfrey if she was scared to show her talents? No. This is relevant to the whole NED trustee space because you have to be confident to be part of a group of people, a board, who are able to steer an organization in honor of the business, not its members or the customers or whatever it may be, but the business, the strategic aims of the business. Okay, so really, really important stuff. Now, you have to be able to seek opportunities. Now, I didn't do this proactively. Maybe you are more proactive than me. But simple thing to do is Google non-executive director roles or jobs. You can do the same thing with trustees. You can also do this with advisory board roles. Okay, so the difference between all of them is with an advisory board or advisory group, there is no legal there's no legal binding to you in that business, but the person who is running that business, usually the founder in this instance, is seeking some element of direction, expertise from individuals who are versed within certain areas of the operations and delivery of this business, okay? But sometimes it can be quite loose when it comes to meetings and all of that stuff there. This is typically a volunteering position as well. When it comes to trusteeship, this is a legally binding directorship. You are a director for this organization and you are holding the CEO to account for what they are delivering against the strategic aims of the business. And again, with this specifically, you are not remunerated, okay, you're not paid. However, you are sort of like afforded usually different expenses. So travel expenses, hotel expenses, food expenses, training expenses, all of this stuff is paid for you on their behalf or your behalf, so to speak. Now, with a non-executive director, the difference is you are paid, okay? So for trustees, it's usually for charities. Non-executive directors is usually for a business and you are paid. And it could be anywhere between, let's say, for example, a day rate of £300 a day and or anywhere between £3,000 to maybe even £25,000 for being on the board. And these positions can last anywhere between 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years. Okay, so it's very legal for the last two. For the first one, it isn't as much. You want to explore opportunities on LinkedIn. So people who have been non-executive directors before that you're connected with, ask them, how did they become non-executive directors or trustees or advisory board positions? Ask them how they got this stuff. LinkedIn is where I found my opportunity. And if you're associated with the right sort of organizations, you will see these opportunities pop up. They don't pop up all the time, but they will pop up in certain different situations. If you're part of a religious organization, you may want to also make sure that you Again, see if there's any positions on their council, so to speak. So that's a really good one to do as well, okay? Now, there is an organization that I sign up to, and I think it's type in board roles on Google and you'll be able to find it. Okay, so it's basically board roles directories. These things exist. And I spoke about it in my previous video, so you can definitely check it out there when it comes to these board positions. But there are board directories which can keep you up to date with all this stuff. I know the NHS does this as well. They essentially have a non-executive director board role directory where you can keep up to date. You can sign up to their emails and apply for this stuff as well. That's another thing. So all this stuff is very, very important when it comes to finding these opportunities. So you can be proactive or just associate yourself with these different organizations. Now, commit to a cause. This is something I coined in 2014. Committing to a cause. Commitment is the discipline and the practices that you commit to each day in order to achieve X. Cause being the thing that is rendered by your heart, is connected to emotion, okay? And so if you become a valuable contributor towards a position within X organization as a board member, then that's that. So for me, what I did before I got into this space was I really expressed my portfolio. I did this via posting consistently online. Okay, I did this through coaching and mentoring individuals. I did this through YouTube videos. I did this through connecting with people at events and just being myself. No strategy involved at all, just being my complete self. I did this through making sure that in my workspace, I was able to present value through my program and project management. So this was, again, sticking to the basics, like knowing how to do good scoping, knowing how to do good planning, knowing how to do good implementation and delivery, knowing how to close a project, knowing how to express benefits, knowing what change looks like and how to transition people along that change and actually embed these different things. I'm saying this off the dome because I've done it. I've done it again and again and again and again. And so if you understand these things, you can talk to these things with confidence. This is where confidence comes from. Experience, okay? Experience. And this is how you develop your expertise. And so the value in me completing the application form, which asks for all of these experiences, was the ability for me to actually do these things in the past. But not only just do those things, find time to actually express this in a written word. And this is where your CV needs to be able to show in a project-y sort of way that you've been able to, again, be a good risk manager, have great governance, and able to have the right level of strategic direction when it comes to delivery. That's what they're essentially looking for. Risk management, governance, and strategic direction, and also knowing how to succession plan. You may not have been able to have done all four of those things. I know I didn't necessarily do the last one, but I did the other three in some guys, in some way, shape, and form. So you have to educate yourself when it comes to understanding what did they want when it comes to actually being a board member. What is it that they want? So educate yourself first on you. Really understand what you've created in terms of your portfolio career and express that on LinkedIn and or via your CV, and I mean your profile. The second step is to really understand what is required of a non-executive director / trustee, even if it's an advisory board role. Utilize that definition of a board member and bring that into the advisory position as well. So hopefully that makes sense. Hopefully that gives you an idea. So key takeaways here are, number one, you need to be able to build your portfolio over time because that's the way you really exercise value, so to speak. You express your value. Number two, only do things that make sense to you and you truly care about. This could be based on your past. This could be based on a past job you've done, whatever it may be. This could be an interest. Number three, don't hide your passion projects. And what I mean by this is, don't hide this in the application process. Don't hide this at work. Express what you're doing. Like, we're all a creator, whether we believe it or not, to some degree. We all have a personal brand, whether we believe it or not. And so this is where you need to orient your brand a certain way. Don't be afraid. Don't forget all those people who you think are hating on you and all that kind of stuff there who are watching you. People are watching all the time, but they won't always speak. Do it for you. Do it for you. If you believe you're that person, do it for you. Also be able to seek out opportunities, okay? So again, you could do this proactively on LinkedIn, go onto board role directories, speak to different people who have been board members before, actually just ask your organization, is there any board position, if that makes sense? There may be a conflict of interest, but there may be other neighboring organizations that it may make sense for. So you need to be able to do this stuff. If you have your own business, maybe you want to set up your own advisory board. Maybe that's the way you get started initially. That's another way of doing it. Finally, commit to a cause. Once you're in, you're in. And you need to be able to provide value. Show up to as many meetings as you can, to the 4 meetings, and meet people outside of those stuff who are on the board, as well as part of the high-level SLT, so the senior leadership team, to understand and contribute value where you can. Value be, just really sharing your expertise and knowledge and experience and supporting them even emotionally if need be. So this is what you need to do. So hopefully this is giving you some insight into why I personally have been able to be a young Black individual within the UK who is 0.2% or 0.8% of Black males within the UK who is on the board. Hopefully this was helpful for you. This is giving you some motivation, some insight as well. If you want to check out more videos around life management and portfolio careers, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell. And as always, my friends, understand, reach, and expand. Peace.